Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today for Aon's podcast series, Aon at the Top. I'm your host, Nicole Ward, the Senior Vice President of Sales at Aon. And in this series, I have the honor of interviewing some of the most distinguished executives, C-suite, and board members to draw out meaningful insights and candid perspectives on how they navigated their way to the top. Today, we get to welcome CFO Elias Nader. Elias Nader is the CFO and Senior Vice President of Finance at QuickLogic, and a true mainstay in the semiconductor and tech space with over 30 years of experience guiding companies through growth, transformation, and innovation. Elias has literally done it all, from leading global finance teams at Pixelworks and Sigma Designs to stepping into the CEO seat when leadership was most needed. Whether he's building financial infrastructure or partnering with boards to steer high-stakes strategy, Elias brings clarity, consistency, and a steady hand to every challenge. He's currently helping to shape the future of tech, not only through his executive role, but also as a board member at Immersion Corporation and Barnes & Noble Education Group. Oh, and if all of that wasn't enough, he holds an MBA in International Business from San Jose State. Clearly, we are very lucky to have him here in the conversation today. Let's dive into the mindsets, the moves, and the milestones that define Elias Nader. So welcome and thanks for being here.
Thank you, Nicole. It's been wonderful knowing you too. I've known you for many years. This is a great event. I'm sure it'll be fun.
Absolutely. So if we could rewind a little bit and thinking back to sort of the outset at your career and, you know, in comparison to sort of where it's ended up, can you map that out? Like, was it all designed in your mind? Is it everything, is it lived up to that roadmap, or have there been twists and turns along the way? Tell us a little bit about the journey.
There have been many, many twists and turns, many failures, many successes. But, the issue is it was always about showing up. You had to show up. You had to be aggressive. You have to be mindful. You have to have empathy when you're growing your career. And I believe I applied a lot of those skill sets I learned from reading, from understanding. It wasn't easy. I came as an immigrant to the U.S. And so when I started school, I didn't even have an idea what I wanted to be. But in the beginning, I wanted to be a lawyer. But then I kind of moved away from it to becoming a finance person, accounting and economics. And because I enjoyed the idea of building something, and I thought it was the right path, but it was never easy. But through building relationships and being, adapting, seizing opportunities when they were there, I think it kind of shaped my movement around to become where I am. But it wasn't easy, for sure.
In terms of, pivotal moments that really helped shape your career, were there moments that you thought defined you or defined your path forward when you look back?
Yes, there were a lot of moments. One of them, I believe, is, seizing the opportunity to take a job in Singapore, to live there as an expat when I was young and with a company that was in the disk drive making business. It wasn't easy to go live abroad, but guess what? Culturally, it kind of opened my eyes to many things. I embraced it. I learned from it. I saw the world differently, coming from West Africa where I grew up. I was born in Lebanon. So going to a different country like Singapore was an eye-opener for me, and it was a fantastic year I spent there, learning, expanding my horizon about the world and my views about my jobs. That was one, I think, big event. I think the other one that shaped it also was the fact that I was never shy to go forward and ask for the job. If something was available, I took the opportunity to make my case, right? So I read a lot. I meditated a lot in terms of where I wanted to be mentally. Where do I go as a finance person? Internal auditing, accountant. Pencil pushing numbers or whatever. I wasn't going to settle for that. Nuh-uh. I started seeing a bigger picture. I could become a CFO. I could build my way.
Where did that come from? Because that's some pretty tough stuff there, right?
Yes, I think it came from my dad. My late father was a businessman. He could like rile numbers in like seconds and tell you what they are if you just give him the hardest multiplication or division. But also he was a businessman who failed twice, and not because of his own doing, but because of the political climate of the country he was in, unfortunately. And I think I learned from those failures because I saw where my father was in those times, and I never forgot about it. And I said to myself, I will never be that way, you know.
So you learned from
He made me stronger.
Got it.
Yes.
And so you learned from his failures.
Yes.
Were there failures of your own that, and I'll quote myself here, my grandmother always said, poop makes great fertilizer. And so failure obviously can be a wonderful growth opportunity.
Yes.
Were there failures of your own that you had to embrace and that sort of helped define and shape your career?
Absolutely, yes. For example, I made wrong choices with companies. The failures of my own where I was not aggressive enough. I kind of laid back and kind of let somebody else take the position that was available internally. There were failures in terms of my ability to delegate or, you know, take on. I took on too much, for example, in one instance, and it wasn't the right choice. It was a dumb move. And I think people who live up to their mistakes and understand that mistakes make you better, I think will learn that it's easier to make a mistake and learn from it than make a mistake and just think it's fine to make a mistake and not learn from it. So I did. I went through some rough patches, but I think I redefined myself in a way. I rebuilt myself.
It takes a lot of courage to be able to do that, a lot of internal fortitude, which it sounds like your father was a really good mentor and sort of
excellent mentor.
Yeah, example of. What about a big win? Was there just, you know, something that you think back on that was just a great win in your career?
I think few of the biggest wins, I would say, if I go back all the way from the beginning, I would say that move to abroad was one. I think the other win that I had was convincing. I was in a company in the chromatography space, and I convinced the higher ups. At the time, I was just a controller. I convinced them to do a shared service center in the whole company, meaning you set up one center of excellence, you may call it, in Europe, and I was the lead on it. They put me as a lead, and I think it was a very successful venture. And a lot of companies, by the way, through the consultants we used, came and copied that path of doing shared service center. It was very popular. Unfortunately, when the company was purchased by somebody else, they dismantled it, which was a terrible feeling for me. But I think building the shared service center was an eye-opener for. It shaped also where my thinking was going. That strategic mind of thinking outside you don't want to be comfortable and stale, right? So I used that to my advantage.
Super smart.
Yeah.
And in terms of, overall your personal values or sort of your beliefs, how has that shaped the tough decisions you've had to make or your leadership style when things were challenging or difficult?
Remember in the beginning I said I showed up?
Yeah.
That's a big theme for me. Some people, they're happy where they're at, right? And they just don't seem to want to get out of their comfort zone. I personally believe you cannot get too comfortable and stale. You got to be able to move around, right? So I think showing up, having integrity, honesty in your way you approach people, having empathy is important in this role as a leader. And of course, I think one of the biggest things I believe in is building relationships. Because I believe you build relationships, and that relationship is where you get some advantages in your box, right? Where you use that to your advantage. But you got to build relationships. And I think critical to that also is the fact that, you got to learn. You can't just say, oh, I'm done learning. No, nonsense. I mean, I read a lot. So I think when I read a lot, I learn a lot more. I understand a lot more about the world and what's going on. You understand? So I feel like I need that.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make me stale. So I become relevant more and more, right?
I love that. I mean, I think what underlines that, or what I'm hearing, is that curiosity.
Yes, I'm very curious.
Wanting to stay in the know and expose yourself to new ideas. I think it's a great takeaway for anyone listening, because getting to the C-suite, certainly of public companies, and being on public company boards is not easy.
No.
It's something that many aspire to do.
Yes.
But with that curiosity, with that desire and thirst to learn, those are underpinnings of it sounds like what got you there. I'd love to, to understand in terms of, your career path, what sacrifices did you have to make along the way? Because there must have been some. The hours that it takes, the energy, the travel schedule, the demands of being being a C-suite at all, let alone public company C-suite and board member. It's taxing. What were some of the sacrifices that you made along the way?
I made a lot of sacrifices. I lost a lot of personal relationships for me personally. That's a personal feeling. I think that was critical in my decision, because I said to myself, I know where I want to go. So I've set myself a map, a path, and I don't want to, kind of detour from it, because then I'm deceiving myself. Nothing is handed to you on a platter, trust me. I mean, remember I said earlier, building relationships. I built some of my relationships with people that till this day, I'm learning from. A lot of amazing people that helped shape my career of sorts, that till this day I tell them, you not only inspire me a lot to learn, but and the other thing that I try to do in this path that I was explaining is I never gave up. Like if I made mistakes, I owned up to them. You understand? But I think I gave up a lot of my personal time. I traveled a lot. I was never in one place at the same time. You know how it is. I'm sure you've done it before, Nicole. You wake up in places, you forget where you're at, and it's crazy. But I think those sacrifices also paid off also, because you met people, you understood the world differently, you understood culture, you embraced culture differently. All of that, while you sacrifice so much of you and your relationships probably with friends or family, it was hard. Like, for example, till this day I regret not traveling back to see my late dad and mom in Africa. I saw them just sparsely, and it was difficult, and that till this day eats at me inside. But I figured that somehow I would, ask for forgiveness from them. But in terms of my personal loss, it was hard, and I regret that piece, and I'm not shy or ashamed to say it. But I learned from it also. It made me stronger. Because I said, you know what, you fail at and you make, certain errors in judgment make you better. And that I believe has paid off.
So something you said there about mentoring and having mentors, I'd love to know if there's one, I know you mentioned your father, but was there another mentor along the way? And then what have you done to sort of mentor up those underneath you?
Yes, definitely. I mean, there's a lot of mentors out there that I can name. One of them I work with currently, who actually put me on the boards I'm on, nominated me for those boards. And I think one of the strengths he has is not accepting no for an answer, not accepting defeat or not accepting failure. He pulls you up from, and that is a big one. That's a huge one. And then early in my career, there was also an amazing person at this disk drive company who was a CFO then, older gentleman who passed away about a couple of years ago. He used to teach me about just being resilient. Always said, celebrate small wins. Embrace them. Celebrate small wins. Create a path of where you want to go with your objectives. And he would give me books to read and tell me about books to read to enhance my skill sets, because, of course, you can tell I have an accent. So a lot of people felt, where are you from, Elias? Where did you come from? And so I would tell them my background, and it kind of opened their eyes up. And, wow, okay, so you came a long way to where you were at. How did you get there? So they would ask me these questions as well, people who worked for me. So I think those mentors I would never forget. But also don't forget, mentors come in many different forms. Remember earlier I said I read a lot. And I believe that in terms of reading and understanding, There are thousands of books I've read, but people like Mahatma Gandhi, in my way, I think basically taught me self-control, right, in his readings or his comments. Martin Luther King taught me equality and dignity in many ways to apply them at work. Nelson Mandela taught me leadership through unity and grace. Have grace in your failures. Don't point fingers at other people. Accept them. Move on. And that will gain you a lot of respect in my book. And then, of course, Leonardo da Vinci made me very, very curious about art. Remember earlier you talked about curiosity?
Yes.
I'm very curious about, even today I came here to meet you and in this studio, I felt I'm curious. This is amazing, that I get to talk about my story in front of people and help some others who probably would have aspirations to move up. And I think that's great. And then, of course, more than anything, there's a Lebanese poet, because I'm from Lebanon. I was born in Lebanon. Khalil Gibran. If you've never read it, you should read it.
Yes.
And I'm sure you have.
The Prophet, absolutely.
Taught me to reflect on pain and loss. I talked about it earlier. And turn those into purpose. You got to have purpose in life. If you don't have purpose in life, you don't exist per se, right? So,
yeah. I know those are wonderful. I think wonderful examples of what shaped you and underpinned your sort of growth and trajectory. I guess I would follow that up with a question around, for those that are listening that are aspiring to the C-suite or aspiring to the boardroom. You just gave some great examples of sort of guiding principles and things. Is there anything else tactically that you would share? Philosophically, those were wonderful examples, but like real tactics, like real things that you did, politically, internally, or otherwise, or through your network to position yourself well for the roles that you've taken on.
Definitely. I would say developing strategic thinking is a good thing for you as an aspiring person that wants to get up there. And I think more than anything, you got to be able to take on projects that are unique, that are out of the box. Think outside of the box a bit, per se, right? A lot of people that I nurtured along, for example, when I joined the company once, and I wouldn't name them, but there were so many duplicate roles. And I sat down and I thought to myself, boy, somebody really doesn't know what they're doing in my head, but I wanted to fix it. So remember I talked about building stuff and I enjoy it. So I took it upon myself to present my case to the higher-ups and the board back then. And I made my case to also become a CFO in that company. And that's why I started. And it was a rough go in the beginning because they said, no, we'll kind of let you kind of test the waters first and see. But once they saw my ability to think outside that box, I would say it built a bit of a stronger relationship with the C-suite and the board seats. But I think more than that, also, you got to be able to communicate well, inspire others in your group to also grow with you, foster relationships, stay adaptable, be open to new ideas and opportunities. Don't be stale. Those are all things you could map out in a career path in my book. Like, for example, if I want to stay the course to just say, I want to be an internal auditor all my life when I started out in public accounting, I would have. But guess what? It would have probably killed me mentally because it's not who I am. I wanted to set a tone for myself that inspired me to say I can do better. And I kept setting the bar up higher and higher. Again, the relationships, be adaptable, show up, learn, speak well to people, and in that company that I described to you, I actually didn't let most of the people go. Of course, the ones that were duplicated and didn't have a role, I found them new homes by helping them say, hey, I'll be a good reference for you. But the ones that I found that were probably very good, I found them new homes because I saw skill sets in them that they would develop. And believe me, till this day, many of them have become controllers, CFOs, and it's because of that little bit of thinking that not to make them feel like they're in a box. That is very, very important in your leadership role.
Yeah, that's huge because there's also a great mentoring there too,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And then you're able to look back and go, wow, I advantaged folks
Exactly,
into a controller
exactly.
or CFO
Yes,
roles, and you
yes.
take some pride in their development, right? As you well should. Absolutely.
Yes.
I'm curious how you balance, the role of CFO and board member, in terms of risk and being mindful of risk, with making bold strategic moves. And I ask this question a lot of folks because I'm always curious about how do we balance that, right? How do you balance being protective and mindful of risk and exposures, but also like big thinking, big moves, right? Because I know that those things come at you. How do you do that? Or is there an example you can give of that?
Yeah, I'll give you a couple of examples. But first of all, I think I'm quick in my decision making. That's number one. I think that's an important skill set to have.
Are you quick because your gut just gives it to you, or
Yes.
because
I built a sixth sense through my career path that I took? The failures I had, the feeling of like discontent, being just locked into this maybe 15, 16 hours day work, right? I had to do something better and smarter. So I think that's one. And definitely remember, you define, for example, a problem like in your world of risk management in your company, and you go and set a path for it and you present it to your whoever, right? And that is where you are able to kind of distinctively set yourself in that leadership role, right? Now, as a CFO, I just don't sit and look at numbers. I'm already ahead of the year, like figuring out what to do next year. Where's the money coming from? What kind of strategic ideas should we look at in terms of M&A, for example, or things like that? On the board side, which is the flip side, I look at the CFO sitting in front of me, and some of them are colleagues of mine or have been colleagues of mine, and I admire them also because I'm in that role. So I flip the coin and I start asking questions that I learned from my job as a CFO, talking to the board members who are asking me these tough questions.
Right.
For example, in public accounting, what are the advantages of having, for example, SOX compliance, right? So that you don't have issues with your controls. There's no fraud. What about cybersecurity? Have you looked at it? Do we need to spend more money in enhancing our two-step authentication, for example? So there are things you can do to kind of maneuver between the CFO role and the board role. And it's never easy to separate them, by the way, because you're still responsible for many people. Remember? Right. Because at the end of the day, the CFO, I have to sign on the 10Q line, right? That this is to the best of my knowledge, these are numbers that you're to rely on.
Absolutely.
And what I'm telling you is honestly, to the best of my knowledge. And on the flip side, as a board member, I have to be able to read between the lines that they're presenting to me, right? Because in one of the companies I sit on, I am the chair of the audit committee. And so I have to learn. And I'm still learning, believe it or not, about ideas and things of where to take it.
Yeah.
So it's very unique.
Yeah, it is. I've heard this from many CFOs who then wear that audit committee chair hat, that you don't know what you don't know until you become an AC chair. And then you're like, oh, wow.
See?
It's very different purviews, right? But insightful and so important.
Yeah. For example, if I may,
please.
There was one time it would have cost us $360,000 or so to go do an ESG report. I took it upon myself to create a small committee, and we did it free. Using the camera of the building that we had, using interviews with employees worldwide, and we created this beautiful ESG report that we have on our website.
That's innovative, right?
Yes.
That's amazing.
I'm not going to take it and say, oh, okay, somebody else can do it, so it's easy. No, because it was something new for me, and I believe in it. I believe in this whole thing about being environmentally friendly. And so therefore, it was a role that I felt was critical that I could take on, and I did, and I did well.
That's great. Yeah. Well, and it also reflects on you as being seen as that real strategic partner to the CEO. Yes. I know so many CFOs that I've been privileged to know over many years. Sometimes they're seen as that strategic partner, that visionary partner, and sometimes it's your back office, and so it sounds like you've been able to really forge a way and a path for yourself,
Yes.
being that true partner to the CEO from a vision perspective and
You
a
have
planning
to be.
perspective.
You have to be his friend. You have to be his ally. You have to look after him, right, in that role. And the same goes for the board. The board has to look after the CEO as well. So we're all doing the same work. It's just different path of priorities, authorization. But you got to be able to say, for example, CFOs, like my role, I have to keep stakeholders and shareholders informed. So I communicate a lot. Some people at times accuse me, oh my God, Elias, you talk too much. But guess what? By me talking too much, I'm enabling that person to understand the company. I can go and knock on doors of banks and analysts and plead with them to come and cover companies, because why? I believe in the company. It is my job to be able to tell you this as a CFO. You're right?
Yeah.
So I got to be able to be communicative. I got to be able to be adaptable. I got to be able to be experimental. I got to be able to move the chess figures across.
Yeah. And, it brings me to my next question, which is really around how do you prioritize various risks, right? Because there's a lot of risks facing companies today. And is there a framework you use? Like, how do you prioritize through those risks?
Well, first of all, when you look at risk, for example, in your company, I mean, and we talked about this before, you and I, many, many times, even before you joined Aon. Assess impact. What exactly are the risks? Impact. Conduct a very thorough analysis. Understand. What are the potential results that could happen, right? How does it hurt the company or make the company better? And then kind of present it to people, and you monitor it and you adjust as you go along. Remember, we talked about it earlier. You have to be always able to assess and adapt to certain things. You can't just be, oh, well, that's what they said, or that's what industry says. Nonsense. There's different ways to skin the cat.
Well, there's so many emerging risks, right? There's AI, cyber, geopolitical uncertainty, especially with global companies.
Regulations.
Yes.
PCAOB risks from the auditors, SEC risks, FINRA risks. There's all that stuff. But cyber being the biggest one in my book today as a board member and as a CFO.
Absolutely. I think it's the top of everyone's list, right? Absolutely. Yes. And so are there things that you've found helpful when you're preparing for potentially, these sort of black swan events or things that happen, out of the blue, are there systems you have in place?
There are, but I think if I could give you one example, right? For example, you talk about no one is prepared to take on like a cyber attack. Really, let's be frank. You have good controls, but there are bad actors out there, right? So cybersecurity being one of them is a perfect example. We were hacked. There's a lot of waste of time going on in the background when you get hacked. You got to inform your insurance company. You got to call the authorities. The authorities then tell you, oh, contact the FBI. Then guys, oh, you need 2 lawyers on the deal. And it creates this massive challenge to how do I get out of this? I didn't waste time. I, jumped in there, got a team together, got the lawyers involved, talked to the authorities, got things negotiated with the bad actors, and we, I'm a tough guy. I'm not afraid to tell them to, drop dead or something. But I
remember this story.
Yes, but I purposely took it upon myself to negotiate and get this thing done and out of there in a matter of just a couple of months, and we were done.
Amazing.
And nothing taken, but we paid a little bit of money, but
much less than you were supposed to.
For sure.
All due to your mad negotiating skills,
yes,
Elias.
You have to be.
I love it. Talk about bold moves and risk taking. I love it.
Yes. But there's a lot of things to what you mentioned just now that this black swan event. There's a lot of things that could happen. The tariffs recently, that is a black swan event because nobody was expecting that it would.
It's a great call out.
Kind of kick us in the rear. It did, because even if you're not affected by it, guess what? You are affected by it.
Exactly.
Everybody is worried. So what do shareholders and stakeholders do? They sell your stock, and if they're afraid that something happened,
right?
These guys will be affected because they used to deal with that country, or I wouldn't name names, but there are things like that are black swan events.
Yeah.
Regulations could change on you that completely change your revenue recognition. You have to be prepared for those. That's why I'm always saying you have to be ahead of the game a bit, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, definitely. And in terms of, if we switch to sort of governance and ethics a little bit here, and when you think about board effectiveness and how it could be improved, you're a seasoned board member. Are there particular things that you do to assess with the boards that you're currently on, or just overall thinking around how boards need to be thinking about their effectiveness and how they pivot and change and grow and stay, agile?
Well, number one, I would say is, understanding, first of all, the company itself and what's out there, right? A board member has to always be adaptable. In my role, as I told you earlier, I learn every day from my, colleagues. We talk a lot. I don't wait for the quarter to set the meeting and just have that discussion in that quarter. No, I talk to them about what are they seeing, what am I seeing. I have meetings with my auditors off the books, meaning that they're not auditing, but we go and sit down and talk about what's happening out there. I talk to my bankers, understand what the market is saying, right? So all of that stuff I do as a board member and as a CFO. So you got to be able to navigate that terrain. Otherwise, again, I use the word stale. You become stale and it becomes inconsequential because you're not productive. See, when you become stale, you're not productive. So I take advantage of understanding the landscape around me and how am I one step ahead? Remember what I said earlier about being one step ahead and being
seeing around corners.
You gotta be able
see
to,
around corners. Yeah.
Yes, you gotta be able to adapt that.
Well, I love what you're saying there about that. First of all, it takes incredible vulnerability and willingness and an openness on your part to ask those questions of all of your vendors, right? Who do have vantage points that you don't always have, right? Public accounting firms, as an example, legal firms, all see into hundreds of companies. So they're very comfortable in seeing across different business models, impacts by industry. So I think it's a testament to you and your leadership that you seek that out with a willingness that takes an admission that I might not know it all right? But that I want to be better. I want to see around corners. I want to be apprised of my blind spots. And I think it's genius. And that's obviously why you've been so successful.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's important. Also, admitting that you don't know. That's a great advice I would have for any aspiring person. When you don't know something, don't volunteer information that's wrong. Please. Say,
Ask.
I don't know. I'm going to go find out for you.
Right.
I'm going to ask around. I'm going to come back with an answer.
Yeah.
But never, ever try to feel like you're the smartest person in the room or act like you are. You could feel it. I feel like I'm the smartest person when I'm around people, but I don't go out and say it, right? But I want to appear smart, of course, but at the same time, I want to be smart about my answers. So I don't, and there's a famous quote that I have on my board. I write it in every company I go. It says, speak less, listen more.
Love it.
And everybody's like, what do you mean? I said, well, exactly what we just went through. People say, why don't you have staff meetings every week? Why? What am I doing with a staff meeting? If there's nothing to talk about, I want my team to feel enabled. Let them go do work. As a CFO, you have to be able not to micromanage. And I do that as well, that thinking also on the board side. You can't go and force people to do something that, is not right or it's not appropriate, for example. You have to be able to say, this is not something we were expecting. It hit us in the forehead, right?
Yeah.
But guess what? We have a bunch of smart people around us. We have a fantastic staff. We have a fantastic company. We can get it done. There's no wrong or right to say, I know everything. Impossible.
Yeah.
Nobody does.
Yeah. No. It's a great call out. When you think, you've been in tech for your career, right? Especially in the Bay Area.
Yes.
The home of it, right?
Yes.
In terms of challenges that your industry faces right now, are there a few key themes, global, otherwise? What What are the challenges? What are the biggest opportunities when you think about sort of tech in the industry overall? Is there any insight there?
I think with tech today, it's innovation. We as companies, when you're running a company, you got to be able to innovate consistently. And you got to be able to be relevant. A lot of companies, especially startups today, are having trouble, for example, getting funded, right? With all what's happening with the stock markets, the high interest rates, the yields are higher. It's kind of affecting everybody's thinking, where do I put my money? So that's a risk that I feel that you need to be able to nip right away. But the world regulations is also changing in many aspects. I mean, if I want to go on a vacation, right, I tell my team and my boss, for example, I'm available 24/7. Doesn't matter where I'm at. Why? Because I want to be able to know that something got done. If I'm responsible for something, I'm not going to leave it behind, right? But the world is changing on us. And because of that, we're having trouble right now to say, okay, what are the risks out there? But more than anything, a company that just becomes stale, stagnant, and unable to kind of innovate becomes a big problem, right? There's a risk there that you fail. And at times, a lot of companies that fail, don't forget, they just give up. And you don't want to be in that type of an environment. You want to be able to enhance change, push for change, don't settle for mediocrity, right? But the world is changing as we sit here. Everything is changing around us. So the risks are multiplying. There's risk from every angle. Tariffs included. The world is at war in a way, right? Everywhere there's a war happening. And it kind of makes you kind of take stock, right? Let me check around me. Who's like who are my like builders of relationships? Who are my task holders, right? Who do I rely on to get this company forward? One time somebody told me, one CEO told me, the analysts dropped us. They don't like the company anymore. No, that's not true. Because you didn't deliver and the company did not deliver, that's why they don't like you anymore. But guess what? Let's go change them. You see? So make it happen.
Yeah.
That's a risk you could take on and say, I can make this risk become a reward. And, you go do it. I've done that too in those regards where I've gone out and created opportunities because I found, because somebody was not saying the right things or we're not adapting to the change that's happening.
Yeah.
And regulations are happening every day. They're changing all over.
What is the role that you see technology playing in strengthening compliance and or monitoring efforts, in that way? Is there a role for technology in that?
Yes, for sure. Well, with AI now, good Lord, I mean, it's changing everything we do, right?
By the minute.
By the minute. And therefore, you also have to adapt, right? You have to be able to navigate that landscape for sure. But, there are so many things I could come up with as examples, but that's one that I think is a big one. Strategy, setting up strategy for the company is a key one, because in today's world, if you look around you, I don't want to use the company's name, but one big company recently, as you can tell, or you can probably think who it is having trouble because they became stale, in my book. No offense to the leaders of it, no offense to anybody working there, but they became stale, and therefore that by itself is a risk. And if there was no proper governance on the board, no proper identification of the problem early on, guess what? I fault them.
Yeah.
I fault them because he created a risk, and everybody slept at the wheel in a way, and it kind of affected everyone else, and it affects people, and I don't want it to affect people. I want my employees to be happy. I want my employees to feel like there's a leadership that I can bank on.
Yeah.
You see?
Totally. Well, what's something that you're really excited about right now when you're reading and you're tracking, in terms of, either trends in tech, or, is there something that's really on your hot list?
I think the biggest things I would say that are on my hot list is I continue learning. I'm not shy about it. But I love to, like I told you, I love to read. I also love to write. I enjoy writing. I'm thinking also of, curiosity, right? I want to see if I can pick up art, for example, like draw something. Why? Because I thought to myself, you know what? I want to see if I could do something outside of the norm.
Outside of numbers,
right?
Elias?
Yeah, outside of numbers, But I think to be serious about the question, I don't want to divert from it, but it's more like, what excites me today is the amount of people that are coming and doing startups. I think it's amazing. I have met so many amazing students that are starting new companies. I think that excites me because I'm able, and I've been part of groups with public accounting companies that actually asked me to go and mentor some of these people.
Sure.
And I mentored one of them, a couple of them actually, that are from Lebanon. One is in the pet food industry. And it was such an amazing idea that he had to create healthy food for pets. And it's and people are very serious about their pets, as you know.
We
right?
sure are.
Yes. And so being able to mentor those guys, I think excites me. So, but technology is changing every day. You have to be able, again, innovation. I think those are the key, I would call the key things, like my colleagues who ask me, well, what do you think I should do after 38 years at this company? I look at them and go, problem is you shouldn't have been there for 38 years. And they look at me, geez, Elias, you're so straight about things.
Is anyone with a company for 38 years anymore?
But again, my point being, I said, because somebody else, if your resume came to me, I said to him, it's stale. I'm sorry, but why is it stale? Because you never adapt, you never moved out of the comfort zone. You were too comfortable. You were never able to be moved. So I think those are the things today that I see that excites me about what's happening technology-wise, and being able to be available to sit on boards. I even, served a short time, kind of like on a charity board, non-profitable board.
Sure.
But why? Because it was to help children, underprivileged children. I didn't put it on my CV, on my resume. I didn't even talk about it. I kept it private because I felt it was my way to give back to society or do something useful with my time to apply my knowledge to it. So I think that in today's world, that excites me. What doesn't excite me, if you want me to elaborate,
please, here it
is
comes.
the fact that there's too many risks and too many issues with the world today, for example, right? I mean, you want to go someplace, for example, Spain, they want to apply taxes on you because you're an American tourist. But guess what? When they come here, we don't apply taxes on them, And the political climate also is kind of tricky because there's also places you go to and there's a lot of countries that have lost people refugee-wise. And so the world is changing. Again, going back to that. That also has an effect on you as a leader in technology, right? And I always admire when I go to these GSA shows, the semiconductor thing that is put on in Silicon Valley every year around December, where they give awards out to companies and stuff like that. But everybody talks about the technology evolving, right? But talk about people a little bit. Let's talk about the society we live in. What are we doing to give back to it? You got to be able to balance the two.
Yeah.
You just can't say, the world of technology excites me. All these things are happening. Regulations are fine. No. There's change every day.
It's complicated.
And
Yes, it is
You're
complicated.
in the risk management world, you know more than anybody.
Absolutely. Well, it's a good pivot to really digging in and understanding a little bit about what you want your legacy and your impact to be, right? I'd love to know, and again, you still have a lot of runway to go, obviously, but in terms of your professional legacy, can you speak to that at all? Have you thought about it?
I've thought about it a lot, especially when I sit with my kids and explain to them about what they always tell me. Geez, Dad, you really made it to the top. I said, yeah, but I made it to the top, but I struggled, and I want you to understand my struggles first before you understand my success. I said, my legacy is all that someday somebody will say, Elias made a difference in certain people's lives. Again, remember when I said earlier, when I find people struggling in a role, I don't just terminate them because they're struggling. I take my time to see if they're good at other things. So I have a sixth sense that kicks in. I use that even in my interview process with potential candidates for a role. I use my sixth sense more than I use their experiences, more than I use their education, more than I use, because people can cram for tests. People can pass exams on the fly. But that sixth sense could help you a lot, and nobody uses that more than someone like Warren Buffett, for example, who I admire a lot. I listen to all his podcasts and his interviews because there's a guy there that uses a lot of that sixth sense. You can tell, not because of what he says, but just because of his ideas and thoughts. So I think I want to be remembered for just being that person that was able to help people, right? And I made a difference in somebody's life somehow. I gave back. That's it. That's simple, But I'm still not done because I'm still learning. I'm still enjoying it.
I get it.
I love these types of events like you're conducting right now because it kind of opens my eyes to, there are people out there who actually look and aspire to learn things that are new.
Absolutely. Right? Podcasts are a great format for that, right?
It's a fantastic format. And I want to be able to say, hey, if I said one thing here that took 1 minute to help somebody, I'm happy about it.
Yeah. So leads into my next question about success. And I'd love to know what that is for you. Do you see yourself as successful? How do you define success other than financial metrics and what's in your bank account, right?
Definitely. I define success honestly as simply what difference did I make in that company? Did I do well? Did I not do well? Success to me, it's more about being able to enhance somebody else's life. Did I make the company better? Did we go from a $2 stock to 10 to 20? Did I have some role in it? I gave you the example of doing the ESG on my own with a small team. And, I'm a tough negotiator, trust me, when it comes to certain things. But success is really, you can never measure it on your own. You have to be able to say, I became successful in something, but guess what? I'm still adapting. And when I leave the studio, trust me, there's something else that I'm going to think about outside that's going to be interesting that I apply in my everyday job and become successful at it as well.
Yeah.
So it's never about the metrics of money. It's more about the legacy that you create in the company, the legacy you create within you.
Impact, right?
The impact you made with someone. Did I make an impact, for example, on a child's life?
Yeah.
By being able to give back? Did I, during COVID, for example, I created a GoFundMe to help my village in Lebanon to get vaccines. It didn't pan out because it's a tough environment to do so privately, but I took an initiative. It was a right thing to do. Was I successful in it? No. But I was successful in it in a way because I made it happen. And whatever we got from that, we used it towards more green objectives for the village. You understand? So that to me, that defines success. You got to be able to be that person that says, I am able to leave a legacy of that person was different.
Right. Was better. You left them better than you found them, so to speak. Yeah, I love that. Well, what have I not asked you that I should have asked you? Or what are some I don't know, some parting thoughts? Or, as the folks that are listening to this are obviously board members and C-suite, but a lot of folks that are, as we mentioned earlier, aspiring to get there. What are some other, kind of leaving parting thoughts that you have?
I think you asked some fantastic questions. I think, the only parting words I would use are simply, like you have to build some grit and the ability to, be different in the way you approach things, right? So, are there proper policies out there, for example, to govern crypto? Are you in the crypto company? Use that to your advantage. Go learn about it, So there's a little parting words I would say. But the most important one is there's a famous quote by Albert Einstein. it's an amazing one because it basically kind of tells you about everything we talked about today and words that you used and I used. And it's simply a person who never made a mistake, never tried anything new. It's a quote. It's actually says everything.
It's true.
If you haven't made a mistake, you haven't tried anything new. You gotta be able to learn. You've got to be able to adapt. You got to be able to move from that. So that's in summary what I would leave you with.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, and it underlines my grandmother's phrase that I shared earlier is poop makes great fertilizer, right?
Exactly.
It's
Exactly.
I think welcoming, inviting mistakes and learning from them creates the grit that you just referenced, that resilience that you mentioned earlier. And clearly that's part of your DNA and your fabric and why you've been so successful and such the dynamo that you have been in what you've done. Absolutely. Well, it's just, of course, after knowing you for so many years, it's just a pleasure to be able to sit down this way and to really dig in and so many great insights and so many wonderful things that you shared.
And you have been a great friend and an amazing friend and colleague. And I think your questions are fantastic. It's a great forum. I think you should use it to help others as well in terms of the podcast.
Well, I'll do my best.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks.